Hello everyone, I'm Jen, I'm the community lead at Mana, and we have today joining us Himal, our founder and CEO of Mana, to take us through a new product release and feature, Families.
Hey, Jen.
Thanks for joining, Himal. So before we get started into showing Families in Mana, what was the inspiration behind Mana designing and building Families?
Yeah, educators and teachers were loving using LoveHeart to produce documentation and improve their capability. And we found, though, that teachers and services kept asking us, hey, how do I share this with families? And so about 12, 18 months ago, we really started embarking in a huge piece of research around families, family engagement. And of course, I've run services myself for over 20 years, very high quality services, and we have a whole organization of people who do that. So, we had our shared experience. We've interviewed thousands of families along the way as well. And we've actually gone through those family teacher meetings and those sessions where we show them through the apps that we use, and we've worked through those problems ourselves. And I think that we wanted to create a families product that paid homage to our sector, the professional teaching relationships we wanted to create, and also kind of solved a couple of the really interesting and important challenges that we have as a sector. I think one of the interesting things that we don't talk about a lot is this idea of Insta teaching. And we used to talk about this a lot at Being, and it was one of the reasons why we started pushing back and reducing the amount of photos and documentation we did, was that, pedagogically, if you think about what we've done to our sector over the last 15 years, we've essentially turned ourselves to the Instagram boyfriends, but now teachers. Every moment of extraordinary depth, we feel like we need to capture that in order to share that with families. And we were talking with some consultants in the sector a couple of weeks ago who are doing studies of services using these kind of apps. And we noticed that, and one of the incredible pieces of feedback we got was a study, an action research piece done, where they found that three educators across 3 rooms were taking 100 photos an hour, 100 photos an hour of children. And you ask yourself, where does that leave time for quality interactions and practice? Because ultimately, I mean, we can talk about pedagogy all day and we can debate about it all day, but ultimately, the value of what we create as teachers for children comes down to the interactions we have with them. And there's also this really perturbed and perverted thing that happens now, which is when something magical happens with a child, what do we do? What do most services do?
Take a photo.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? So
Right.
we're training children, we're conditioning them to perform, and that every time they do something extraordinary, it's rewarded through photography, not through presence and engagement. We imagine for us, early education, the value we create starts with us being present, engaged, and just being in flow in the moment, not photographing every moment. And so we want to take the sector back to the magic that existed, but leveraging the tools and the powerful technology that exists today.
Absolutely. And I think also it was interesting at Campfire was one of our speakers was saying that educators are taking photos of children at the Play-Doh table, but it's like 10 photos of the same thing, but then it's wasting time of them taking 10 photos of the children, snap, 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 snap. And then they're spending time to look at the right photos or quality photos, they think, to share with families, which is absolutely insane.
I mean, it's a problem that we made as a sector. We chose, we made a call a lot, 10 years ago, and I'm guilty of this at our services. We made a call 10 years ago to come online and use these products that kind of resembled Instagram and Facebook. And I think that's really challenging, right? Because we knew the problems with social media and what that creates, but we decided to bring that into our services. And we thought that it would lead to a different outcome, but actually it's led to exactly the same outcome. Social media, unfortunately, encourages more shallow interactions, right? things are rewarded. Our dopamine responses are based on likes and comments, which are what these platforms prioritize, right? Likes and comments. And that's really crazy if you think of us as teachers. Okay, let's look at the world differently, but us as professional teachers and pedagogists, how can we judge the quality of what we do by a like or a comment? It's inappropriate, and that's led now to a practice where teachers share beautiful photos versus key learning. We're teachers, for God's sakes. Our job, what we create for humanity, is educating and caring for these young human beings, not taking beautiful photography of what they do. And so we have to value ourselves as teachers and pedagogists as well, and recognize that actually the value we create is around communicating learning that happens, not around beautiful photography. But we also need platforms that support us with that. And so that's really what we wanted to do with families, which is bring ourselves out of this Insta teaching mentality back to the essence of what we do, which is child development, which is why we call Mana an intelligent child development platform. The
Awesome.
first of its kind.
Very exciting. I mean, just to play that back, I stumbled across a TikTok video of an educator, praising that she had a certain amount of likes and family engagement. And then the whole comment section of that video blew up of them saying, oh my God, that's so great. I got 5 likes, or I only got 2 likes on my post. It was just absolutely ridiculous. And it was just this back and forth of the whole view of that's quality family engagement, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But I'm also guilty of it as an early childhood teacher. I was so fixated on constantly checking my post. Oh, did that parent comment, or did that parent like my post, or oh my gosh, that parent gave me 2 likes. Yay, I'm so happy. Yeah. And really reflecting on that now, that is not quality family engagement.
I mean, it's great for social media. Look, I'm not an expert on social media, but we already know the problems with it. We know how it's, the harmful impacts that kind of interaction pattern is having on humanity. And I think, yeah, it's bringing that into the classroom, which is challenging by itself as a model. And I think that, there are services who recognize this and resisted it. And I think that they're seeing more depth and quality interactions between teachers and educators, and we had some really awesome conversations about this at Campfire, which I really loved. And, what we're seeing are high quality services recognizing this as an issue and really making a choice about where they put their technology and what service providers they use in order to support those outcomes for children. I mean, ultimately, I think we'll look back at the last 10 years and maybe 20 and 30 years and ask us, like, what the hell were we thinking? I think there's a real moment for ourselves to reflect and as a sector and ask ourselves more critical questions around what should we have been prioritizing in these moments? Maybe we couldn't have predicted that it would have led, the societal changes are happening. We couldn't have predicted that. But I think this is a real challenge that we have now that we need to address. And I think the other challenge we have now is, it's really related to this idea of posting. The documentation we create as professional teachers shouldn't necessarily be the documentation we provide to families. As professional teachers, we produce documentation as part of our practice, which is personal to us, right? Like, I know you probably had these moments where, I was in a classroom and I was thinking, okay, I just noticed Johnny doing something extraordinary. And I'll just write it down on a piece of paper and I'll just sticky note it or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's documentation as part of my professional practice. But I think this idea of the social media approach, right, like posting, liking, commenting, that kind of social idea, means that every time we produce documentation, it's like a performance. It has to look good. It has to be free of spelling errors. It has to, all of that kind of stuff. That's pedagogically incorrect. We should be documenting as teachers, as frequently as we believe is necessary to support our practice in improving outcomes for children, not as part of the practice of making a beautiful post to share with families.
I think it's also the not only the photos, but it's also the content or the learning stories that we're sharing with families. You know, how are they meant to understand, you know, the observe, assess, where to go, where it's not really like it's not aligned, or how can they move forward with their child's learning if it's this big long learning story? How are they meant to connect that with home?
It's such a, I mean, I think you've raised this like really important question about what is meaningful family engagement. And, you know, for us, it's not about likes, comments, posts. That's a really meaningful model, maybe for social media. But I think as professional teachers, we have got to ask ourselves a more fundamental question. And especially organizations who value quality, right? I don't know if this is going to be true for every organization, but particularly for organizations that value quality, we know in the NQF, QA6, you know, and as part of our exceeding themes or same in NZ and various contexts across the planet, that meaningful family engagement is core to high quality practice. But what is meaningful family engagement? You know, while I think we, you know, learned to believe that it's likes and comments and posts, I actually think, and we at Mana believe, that it's actually more fundamental than that. In the first instance, what about if meaningful family engagement means that a family authentically understands their child's learning? Authentically, you know, like the family now understands my child went from here to here, and they understand why that's important. But not only that, not only do they meaningfully understand a child's learning, but they're able to extend that learning at home. Well, that would form the basis of collaborative teaching partnerships. Not we are teachers and we're teaching a child and helping them towards a goal, and then the family is a consumer of that, which is what social media is, right? It's a consumption mechanism more than anything. But now we have us side by side working towards a goal, and family members feel empowered to contribute to that because they have the knowledge, skills, tools, capacity, and the inspiration to contribute to the learning. That to us is meaningful family engagement. And so, you know, when we were thinking about building Mana Families, you know, we've been working so hard for the last 18 months to really, you know, we had to remove our own biases of what family platforms should look like because we've been in the sector so long, right? You know, our first kind of thinking around this was very much like Facebook. You know, it's like, oh, posts, likes, comments, and then we had to strip it back and start asking ourselves these fundamental questions. And then once we got there, we realized, geez, like we can actually create slowness and connection and understanding in a way that wasn't possible before. And we can do that by, you know, just working on some of these really key areas. And that's what's been so magical about seeing families now in the hands of, you know, so we have thousands of families now using this product, and we can really see the magic that's really occurring. So yeah, that's
absolutely. Well, we're really excited to show everyone the vision of you know, of families and why we've built it and things like that. So yeah, super excited. Himal, would you like to share your screen and start to show everyone families?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is, let me share my screen. So I'm going to jump straight in, Jen, to a live version of families. This is my actual account, so you can see, you know, what I see when I jump into families. So the first thing you'll notice is there's no timeline or no newsfeed, right? There's really intentional placement of specific things through Mana Families. It's simple to understand, and it focuses on child development. That's the key, right? We want families to see the value of what we create as child development, not as pretty photos.
Great. And so, just to confirm, Himal, this is what our families see, right?
Yeah, so I'm in the families version now on web, and on the app, it looks, you know, just so beautiful as well.
Great. Thank you.
Now, it's not fully filled out because this is my live account, but I'll just show you through the concepts, and I think that will give a really great understanding of how this works. So the first thing that's really cool about families in this getting started section is Coach Sue is proactive. So, you know Coach Sue from our teachers product. She's a practice and pedagogy coach. but we've really worked on expanding her capability to support services with one of the hardest things that there is to do, which is the all about me.
Oh my goodness, all about me.
You know, in order to support a child's learning when they first start at your service, one of the most critical things we do is collect meaningful information from families about all of the various things that we need to know, right? And one of the challenges we have at the moment with All About Me forms is that they're these static templates with boxes and, families need to fill them out. I think, we get frustrated as teachers because families often don't engage with the All About Me form. But I think what's interesting is when you talk to families, they don't know how to engage with it. They don't know what this thing is, right? We assume that families know what an All About Me is. When we say, hey, tell me about your child's cultural background, that they know what that even means. That's what really, we understand it as professional teachers, but families may not necessarily understand it, right? And so, there's so much confusion that's caused in that process. And so what we really were looking to do is understand how we can smoothen out that interface using Coach Sue, and for Coach Sue to be more proactive. And some of the strengths of Coach Sue is she can ask follow-up questions. So let's say, my background is Sri Lankan. So let's say I say my cultural background is Sri Lankan. Coach Sue can ask me a follow-up question. Can you tell me more about that? Were you born in Sri Lanka? Do you live in Australia now? What's the circumstances of that? How long have you been here, etc.? And she can ask me follow-up questions to get more in-depth knowledge that you just wouldn't be able to get on a form, right?
Himal, would it be okay if we show everyone what that would look like live?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's Adam G's All About Me. Right. So Adam's our focus child for today that we'll be working through. And you can see Coach Sue here said, hey, I'm Sue from Love Heart Australia. That was the name of the centre. I'm here to help gather some important All About Me information about your child to create meaningful experience for them at the centre. Let's start with your child's family. Can you share who are the members in your child's immediate and extended family? Now, as a family member, I can interact with Coach Sue like teachers can. I can talk to Coach Sue, for example. So let me talk now. I'm the father, Himal. My wife's name is Laura. Adam also has a sister and a brother, Jen and Hayden. We also have a couple of extended families. He has an auntie and an uncle who live in Australia, but his further extended family live in Sri Lanka and various other countries overseas. So family members can just speak into Mana, and then, just like that, Coach Sue will be able to take what they've said and take it from there.
Great. And for our multicultural families, can they speak in their home language?
Exactly. Isn't this just such a breakthrough in equity, right? Families can speak in their home language, and then Coach Sue can understand that and respond back to them in their home language. So you don't have to have multiple translations of a form. You just have Coach Sue, who's multilingual, who can support that interaction powerfully.
Which is an absolute breakthrough. I know as an early childhood teacher, having to give those forms out and then, to our multicultural families, and they would really struggle to understand what this is, how to write it. They weren't confident. So this is an absolute breakthrough for us.
Now you can see Coach Sue here is going to ask a bit now about our cultural background. So let me answer that. So I'm a Sri Lankan Australian. I was born in the United States because my dad and mum were studying there, and then moved across to Australia when I was 9 months old. Laura is a Filipino Australian. She was actually born here, but her parents were born in the Philippines. So we have various different cultures, and we are very strongly connected to our culture and background. So we can actually, again, it's really easy to talk about who you are versus have to type it as well. So for families, that's really great, right? That they can kind of explain and elaborate on that.
And I'm just curious to know, Himal, so as you're talking to Coach Sue's gathering all of that information about that child, especially when it comes to learning, for the teacher to record things. So already have that context about the child.
Exactly. So once this All About Me is created, that gets transferred to the teachers, and they can see the All About Me. They can see all of this information. If it was in a different language, will be in a language that the teachers can understand. So it gets summarized really beautifully for them. And now you can see Coach Sue's going into things that Adam likes, his hobbies, his favorite music, colors. So let's go into that now. So Adam really, really loves Transformers at the moment. I actually shared with him one of the Transformer toys of Optimus Prime that I used to play with when I was young, and he's really loved that. My mum also used to read Mr. Happy and the Mr. Men book to me, and Adam loves Mr. Men, and he loves Mr. Happy, which is really cool. We love playing outside. We're a cricketing family because, well, of course, we're Sri Lankan background, so we love cricket, and so we love playing cricket. In fact, over Christmas, Adam picked up his first bat and he tried to swing it, so that was really awesome. And yeah, so those are some of the things Adam likes. So again, like, it's really nice and easy for families to share rich information about them, again, using voice. But of course, if they'd like to type it in, they could type that in to coaches as well. And so what's cool here is, and maybe we can, in the interest of time, we don't have to go through the whole thing, but Coach Sue will really help elaborate. I'm giving her a lot of information at this stage, but if I had asked something, said something really, that could be elaborated on, should ask follow-up questions. And towards the end of this, and now she's going to ask about things that Adam dislikes, right? So that's really important as well to support teachers and understanding the holistic child. So yeah, Coach Sue is going to summarize all of this. And one of the really cool things Coach Sue does at the end of this All About Me is supports the family members in choosing 2 goals for the child. And those 2 goals become suggested goals for the teachers to start their cycle of planning or start their ILPs in the teacher's product. So they come across in journeys as suggested goals, which is really cool.
Which is great, because it was always really hard as a teacher to try and engage with families like, oh, do you have a goal in mind? So that's really great that that's been taken care of.
So let's just like move this. Actually, let's actually have a go at this, right? So I'll just say not really. Maybe I don't understand it yet. So you can see here, what are some developmental goals you'd like you might have for Adam as he attends a center. So as a family member, I could just say, I don't know, right? I may not know what I want my Adam to work on. Right. Which
is such an important thing to point out as well, because some families don't really know and they tend to ask the teachers. But I think, this is really great to prompt the parents to think a lot more deeply about their child's development.
Now look at this. Given Adam's love for cricket and imaginative play with Transformers, perhaps we could focus on developing his fine motor skills and enhancing social play. Do these ideas, resonate with you? So I can say I like the idea of social play.
I like that she's connecting it with his interest.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Straight away, right?
Yeah.
But what about his letter recognition skills? So as a family, I might have a priority that, I want that, I want him to start reading and start to learn phonetics and, the starts of reading. Great. So, social play and letter recognition are great goals. Engaging Adam, blah, blah, blah. Like story time with his Mr. Men books. So bringing that back in, very cool. Can support his letter recognition. Would that work for him? Let's say yes.
Yeah.
And now what Coach Sue is going to do is she's working in the background to go, okay, let's submit this thing.
Nice.
All About Me is now submitted. Thank you. We're done. Right. And then, saying that she's free to help. And so the All About Me experience is just so streamlined now and supportive for families.
It's very collaborative, which is awesome to see.
And you know what? As a professional teacher on the other side, instead of, this form, it's like you get this really rich information. Look at what Coach was able to get out of me in that conversation. You get this really rich information that supports you on day one in supporting this child. It's a whole new way of thinking about the All About Me form. Right?
Which is great also because Coach Sue's gathering all of that evidence to help support the teacher to make those connections with home life, interests, goals. It's all been taken care of. Whereas, me as a teacher, when I used to do it, I would have to try and make those connections within all of my documentation for children.
Exactly. And so, do you want me to keep going, Jen, through?
Absolutely. Yeah, curious to know more.
Yeah. So one of the breakthrough ideas we had with Mana families was this idea of disconnecting the documentation we write as professional teachers for ourselves and the regulators from the documentation we share with families. So let me explain that a little bit more, because I think this is so important, right? When we go in our assessment on our cycle of documentation, we go, in assessment or recognize, or whatever that phrase is, we say, oh, this links to the framework, outcome 4.1, this strand, blah, 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 here's why, etc. We were talking to families and asking them, like, how do you understand this stuff? Is this meaningful for you? Does it help you understand your child's development? And one of the really interesting pieces of feedback we got was unashamedly across the board, absolutely not, right? I don't know what the EYLF is. I don't know what, Tefariki is. I don't know what these strands are. I don't know what the NQS is. And so we're producing all of this documentation. And as teachers, we know this. We just were scared to admit it, I think, right? Because we were taught, hey, we need to do this and share this with families. And we didn't have a better way, right? Because again, we were performing in our documentation. We were putting photos, putting this document together, and we had to share it with families because that's what we were supposed to do. And we didn't have another way of communicating specifically for families and disconnecting that from our professional teaching documentation. And so we realized that connecting those two things is broken. Families we need to support families in their understanding as much as we need to support teachers and educators. Yes, we want families to understand the EYLF or Tefariki or their relevant framework. We want them to understand child development concepts like attachment and resilience and so on. But we've got to meet the family member from where they are today.
Absolutely.
We can't expect them to understand these concepts.
No.
And so if we want to create teaching partnerships with them, we have to also support their development and their knowledge. And if we support their knowledge and development, suddenly, magically, they can actually partner with us in a more meaningful way. And so that's where we stumbled across a concept we know in our sector. We call them magic moments. I mean, all of our sector knows this idea. And we said, hey, what about if we supported families in understanding and learning about their child's development by showing them the magic moments, these really awesome moments that their child develops, of moments of development that their child undertakes. And so what Mana does now is, as you're documenting in the platform, in our teachers platform, Mana uses slow pedagogy. So we're not going to, we're not going to contribute to the social doom scrolling idea. We want meaningful, intentional, deep and rich interactions. And it's going to create magic moments at meaningful intervals when children demonstrate some key learning. And so I'll show you this one. This is one that we created for Adam. Right? So if I click into this now, you can see here with a magic moment, Mana creates firstly a tile, and it actually creates this really beautiful background organically. You can see the shapes of the flowers kind of brought. It creates that organically for that specific key learning moment, right? So you can see here also, it's rewritten all of this information in a way that families can understand. And it's not just all families can understand, it's this specific family can understand. It's this specific person can understand, right? So you can see here, it says nurturing communication through emotional expression. Over time, Adam has begun to weave a broader array of emotion words into his daily interactions, marking a key development milestone. This moment captures his transition from simple expression to articulating his feelings during peer interactions, which supports his awareness and social communication skills aligned with EYLF principles.
So now, if we step back, right, it used to be a big, long learning story to a really beautiful, small key learning moment for families to read.
And written specifically for me. So as Himal, it knows that I know about the EYLF. So it's, raised that in. It knows that I have a basic understanding, or knows what I know about child development based on how I've interacted with the platform. So, this one is more developmentally rich to support my current understanding of child development. We have families who will know a lot more than me about child development. And again, this will be more developmentally rich and maybe draw upon better concepts or bigger concepts for them. And also families who may not know as much. And for them, it will be much simpler in ways that they can. So it's really, again, using that, ZPD idea, proximal development, to, to understand where the family member is at in their journey of understanding child development and supporting them from there in words that they can understand, that they can relate to. And this is what's been such a breakthrough about this feature. We're getting such incredible feedback from families because suddenly they're not seeing photos all the time. They're seeing meaningful moments of child development. And that's what they're interested in, right? Ultimately, they hang on to photos because that's what we're providing them at this stage. But when we surveyed families using Mana and we asked them, how does this compare to your previous experience? We're seeing a significant shift in their perception of value of the service being provided and their satisfaction in the services that the center are providing, because now they can actually see the learning. That's the key, right? Communication around learning is the key to providing great family engagement in the service that we provide as teachers. And so, you can see here how beautifully it captures this in this really beautiful way. And this looks stunning on mobile, like it looks incredible on mobile as well, which is where most families kind of engage it from. I'm doing it over web today. The second cool thing about this is, yes, it summarizes the learning and helps aid in their understanding. Now, as a family member, I understand, hey, this is about articulating feelings. That's actually a moment of learning. I didn't know that before, right? I didn't know that when a child articulates feelings using language and words, that's actually development. Now I do. The incredible thing also that it does is that it provides 3 opportunities for how to continue this learning at home for that family member. These are simple, easy to do things at home that family member can just pick up straight away and start doing with their child to support the continuous development in this area. So you can see here, read storybooks that focus on characters and their feelings. Pause during the story to ask Adam how he thinks the characters feel and why. Something simple, a family member could just start doing at home. And this will further support that child's development in that area.
Which I think is really important to point out, with our learning stories that we write, it's always what the teacher or what the centre is going to do to support their learning. It's never collaborative, it's never reciprocal. We never provide parents with actual activities they can do at home. It's always one-sided. So yeah. I love that collaboration.
That's right. And so now we have collaborative partnership with families, right? That's the key. When these are collaborative teaching partnerships where the family is empowered and engaged to do the things that they can do at home, and the teachers are empowered and engaged to do the things they can do at the service, and we're working together to support that child's development, which is just so extraordinary.
Great. And how often, I know you mentioned this before, but how often do parents get these updates? Because I know, educators are constantly posting every single day updates. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we're really keen to slow our sector down. I think we've reached like a fever pitch now where we're just hundreds of photos every hour, which is just ridiculous. Not only the security concern about that, but the pedagogical impact of that is just, we're doing more harm than good at this stage. I think we want to slow our sector down. We want to focus on nurturing great relationships between children and children and educators and teachers and families as well. And so to slow us down, the key is quality over quantity. And so what our platform does is that it makes a choice. Every 3 to 20 odd days, it will create a magic moment, but it will only create it if it's intentional, if there's a real moment to share, right? If there's nothing that's meaningful that's happened, maybe we haven't documented or whatever that is, because of course children are going through magic moments all the time. But if there's authentically nothing magical to share, it won't do it. And that's important as well, right? It's also important to give families time to implement these ideas at home. Because, giving them, if we just keep hitting them with do every day, bang, 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 do this, they're not given time to extend on this and deepen it for themselves and then communicate back to the service about, hey, we tried this over the last week. It's been awesome. We've noticed Adam doing this and this and this now. And so we really want to slow things down. And I think when we slow things down as well, we're reducing the expectation of constant documentation from our services, which also reduces pressure on the service. But it increases the quality of our interactions, which increases our professional identity and value perception of what we do as early educators. So it has this really incredible impact on our sector.
which I think is so important, not only for the teacher's perspective, is like, what can we do next? What can we do? What can we do next? But then it's also giving families the time to actually implement these activities at home and give them the time and space to actually implement it.
Exactly. Now, also, you can see here, Jen, I'll just keep going here a little bit. You can see here with the linked docs that Mana will give the family member a couple of the documents that it felt like were really important to share that contributed to this. It won't give it the whole breadth of how it came up with this magic moment, because that's quite complex, but it will give it some of the documents that were critical in creating this. Again, so the professional documentation that that teachers are producing for the regulator and for themselves as professional teachers, they can share that if they want to, but it gets shared. A couple of them get shared, but it's not the point, right? This is what matters. This is the documentation that matters for families. This is what's going to support them in understanding their child's development and supporting it, continuing that at home.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing the magic moments. I love to see, how that all works and how that can be a lot better with quality family engagement. So awesome.
Yeah, and I'll just keep going through our product. So of course, Jen, the goals that we set for children and the documentation around that goal and how we're progressing towards that is still available here in the current goals section. So you can see here all the goals that we're currently working on with Adam. A family member can click in and they can see, the documentation, the what we've shared, why it's important. They can comment and, do all that kind of stuff to express, if they have feedback, they can add all of that in as well. So that's all still available. You can see it's deprioritized. But I want to ask you something, Jen. As we went through this, were you engaged in Adam's learning at all?
Absolutely, I was. Yeah. I think also just seeing the learning and also like the why, so the home activities and then the why. So it's actually giving parents a bit more information as to why that links to child development as well. It's not like, okay, here, do this at home. There's the why behind it.
Now, I'm going to give you something that most people don't even recognize when they're going through Mana. Did you see a single photo relating to a child here?
No photos.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
You can share deep, rich, and engaging information about the child and their child's development in a way that families say is way better than what they're getting currently.
Yeah.
And we don't have to share a single photo.
Yeah, that's insane. And just for everyone, like, this is one of my first times I've really gone into family. So this is my natural reaction, everyone. This is insane.
I mean, imagine what's possible now when we can disconnect from this Insta teaching, always on, like, performative early education idea, and we can come back to deep teaching relationships and child development and the things that make us who we are as a sector.
Yeah.
That's the core and essence of what we do, not photographing children. And I think I say that with such strength because we know what we're doing is wrong. We just don't have an outlet, a way to transform what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And especially services that prioritize quality know that what we're doing is not the right way. And so this is just such an awesome way to really expand out of what we're doing today into something that's, we just haven't seen stuff like this in our sector before.
No. And something like I'm reflecting, I'm like, I wish I had this when I was a teacher. I wish I could be able to really engage my families a lot deeper than what I was before. So yeah, this is amazing.
I mean, we really think, we're already seeing that teachers are 36% less likely to leave the sector when using Mana teachers. But now where families are engaging with us with professionalism based on, respectful, reciprocal teaching relationships, because the products that we're using really help us with that. And, imagine what's possible then. I think that we can really solve some of the challenges of our sector, especially around professional identity, by supporting these much more important conversations.
I'd hope that when you're having conversations face to face with families, you're able to talk about this instead of, oh yeah, they've had a good day. It seems to be such a common thing that educators say. So it'll be really great to see our educators now start to make those clear connections with child's learning at home, but also at the centre with families as they come through.
Awesome. And I think it's worth just also mentioning that you can do, the way that we connect families and services together in terms of communication is also through our chats feature, which we might just step through really quickly, Jen, just in the interest of time. But I think, one of the things to notice again about chat is we've really looked at how our sector does communication, and we've asked ourselves much more fundamental questions, right? Some of the challenges that our sector were having were things like when an educator decides to communicate with a family over an app, a lot of the time those communications are hidden from managers, teachers, etc., right? And so sometimes those conversations aren't aligned with the service's practice, pedagogy, and policies, but they're happening and they're invisible. And also from a continuity perspective, let's say I go from room A to room B as a child. The new teacher, the new key educator focused teacher can't access the conversations that were happening before, so they can't get up to date on what's going on for that child, right? And so information gets lost in this, this completely blank and this completely, it's hard to describe. I mean, it's just like dark space. We can't find anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that that's maybe not the right approach to take when we're talking about professional teaching relationships, where we want to encourage continuity. We want to encourage that all the focus teachers for this child are in the loop and understand what's going on, right? So I think we really wanted to look at that, but we also wanted to increase safety in communication. I've seen in the newspaper so many instances of chats happening on apps between family members and centres. And those chats now are in the newspaper because some of the things that were communicated were really, not aligned with. And it's both ways, right? It's, family members may not know how to communicate with us effectively, and we may not know, how to communicate with family members effectively. And technology can support those interactions, right? We can moderate conversations. We can make sure that, one of the things we implemented in Mana early on, 24 months ago, was making sure that child sex material couldn't go into the platform, and these are small security protections that should just be there whenever we're using products.
Yeah.
And same with communication. We know the standard of communication that ought to occur in an early childhood environment. We shouldn't be allowed to swear at each other or, say degrading things with each other. And so with Mana, we've implemented over 47 different protections in chat that moderate the conversation and provide the person who's maybe inputting that information some assistance and coaching to support them in bringing more of a productive dialogue into the conversation as well.
So for like managers as well, they can also oversee conversations as well, because I feel like that's also been an issue in our sector, is managers not having a clear overview of all those conversations they're having with parents and families.
Exactly. So managers can see every conversation that's happening across the centre by default, and there's no way to kind of have private conversations, right? Yeah. And I think that's okay. I think if there's something that needs to be shared with a family member, it should be able to be shared with the key teachers and educators as well, if it's part of a professional teaching relationship, right? That transparency and openness is important. And again, there's so many different reasons for why that's important. Think child safety, for example, why it's definitely important in that context as well. So, there's so many different reasons why that needs to be reimagined. And so we did something really hard, which was we said, okay, well, from that basis, how do we reimagine communication? Again, we have so many biases because we've been using the existing tools for so long. And we came across something that we really love, this idea of channels. And so with chats, everything is kind of organized into a channel, and Mana intelligently adds the right people into the right channels so that they're always in the loop. So let me just show you what that looks like.
Yeah, I need to see what that looks like, Himal.
Yeah. So this is the families section here. Now, you can see here, Adam, we have three types of conversations or topics, sorry, channel types for families. And then we have an extra one for services that we'll talk to you a little bit about. But you can see here, every child gets their own channel. So these are all the children that I'm responsible for, and each of them have their own channel. And Mana intelligently adds the key teachers for that child, as well as the family members for that child, into the channel. And channels are just the best way to communicate for a number of reasons. One is when someone is added into this channel. So let's say as a key teacher, I transition. So Adam transitions from the nursery to the toddlers, and the key teacher changes. Then key teacher from the nursery gets removed, and the key teacher from the toddler's room gets added.
Mm.
And the key teacher from the toddler's room can then go and look through the whole history of the conversation to get up to speed with what's happening between the family member and the service. So that communication history is not lost, it's actually transferred, which aids in continuity, right, and transitions. But every document, every magic moment, every conversation that's happened is added into these channels. So everyone's always in the loop.
Which I think is so important, right? Like you said before, it's like you kind of get left in like this dark space where, you know, if you're the toddler teacher and you've got a new child coming in from nursery, you're like, okay, I need to understand the child's history. It's great to know that you've got all of that information. So, and it's often can be quite, I wouldn't say dangerous, but it's also like, let's say the child had an allergy or, you know, a child sleeps at certain times, you're able to have all of that information ready to go so that, you know, you don't have grumpy parents or I told you this already kind of thing,
Right.
which often happens.
How often does that happen where the communication has happened to one person, but it hasn't been effectively communicated?
It hasn't been filtered across the other, you know, 2 or 3 teachers in that room.
Yeah. And now everyone's in the loop.
Totally.
So everyone knows, we understand, okay, family member said, hey, you know, Johnny or Adam wasn't sleeping well last night. You know, can we prioritize maybe, you know, half an hour extra sleep or something like that? You know, everyone's in the loop.
Everyone's in the loop.
Which is, cool. Yeah. And so you can see here also these docs that I've shared, I can just go ahead and access those straight from here. And if I want to, I can comment on them as well. So like all those kind of basic features are there. You know, so that's all accessible right here and all in one place. Now, the second kind of channel we have are room-based channels. So these are the rooms that my child is part of. And we have ability for the rooms to communicate with their families about things that are going on in the room as well. Now, room-based conversations are one way. So educators and teachers can communicate out. Family members can respond to posts, but they can't write their own posts in there. So let's say, for example, there's a communication outwards like, you know, this one here, they can go in here and reply in the thread, but they're not able to, you know, clog up, you know, because there's so many people maybe in this room, they can't go and clog it up and, you know, add their own things in. And remember, moderation is going to support on our enterprise plans. Moderation will be able to support and make sure that, you know, the right conversations are happening at the right time.
Great. So just to play that back, they get updates within their rooms or their child's rooms, but if they wanted to communicate with the educators or teachers, they just go into the child's channel and reply through that if there's anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
And then the topics channel are topics across the whole center. So these are, you know, we have various channels that we create across the whole center that allows, you know, communication about various different things. So you can see like there's an events channel, there's admin channels, there's community updates, all of these kind of really, you know, different kinds of things that family services engage with that we're just communicating as well.
And the common question we get asked all the time is, how do I upload newsletters or policies? So how can I do that, Himal?
Well, that's where, you know, general or community updates is really great. So community updates is a great channel to go in and post in, you know, here's this newsletter that we have for the whole community. And then family members know what to expect when they go into that. Right. Whereas your admin channels are probably better for, you know, policies and so on. Here are these policies. And remember, all of the history of these channels are available to family members who get added into it in future. So if you have a new family member, you've added some policies, they can come access those policies.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so you have persistent conversations with families so that we get a history, we understand what's going on, it's organized, it's structured, it's safe, which is critical, right? And we have so many incredible features coming out in here in our chats, a feature for enterprise customers, for example, auto translation. Just makes sense, right? We communicate one way, family member doesn't understand English, gets translated into a language that they can understand, just like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. And was there anything else you needed to show in terms of families?
I think that's it. So yeah, that's kind of families in a nutshell. You can see it's simple, it's powerful, it's meaningful, and it's slower. And I think as a result of that, services that adopt families are going to be able to create really meaningful, collaborative teaching partnerships. And I think that services that prioritize quality, this is just such a tremendous opportunity now to start exploring what's possible. I think the quality mindset is the key, right? Quality is always about taking on a continuous improvement mindset, looking for opportunities to enhance and do things differently and better. And I think that, those services that really do prioritize quality are going to benefit a lot because they have the mindset of improvement as well.
Absolutely. And just the last question, Himal, how do our existing centers or educators and teachers, how can they turn families on?
Yeah, so if you're part of an enterprise, please reach out to our sales team, book a demo. We can run you through it again, and we can show you kind of how all this works together. If you're just ready to jump in, Families is available just with the flick of a switch. So you would just go into your team account. So let me just go into this team account here. You go to your team settings, press Families, and then quite literally flick on the switch. And then it's on.
Easy as that.
It's easy as that. And if you want support in implementing families across your organization, any organization that's going on this journey, we are here to help and provide you just an extraordinary onboarding experience. So just reach out to us. We'll support with the implementation. We'll support with the transition from your existing software across as well. And we'll support with making sure that this just becomes magical.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Himal, for your time and taking the time to show us through families. It's a very, very exciting breakthrough for our sector. And for those out there that are curious to know about families, feel free to reach out to one of the team and we'll happily take you through our families feature. So thank you so much for watching and we'll see you guys all next time.
Thanks, Jen.